Hello, and welcome everybody. Welcome to Unscripted Intelligence, a podcast where we talk about human intelligence, artificial intelligence, how they intersect, and how they impact everything from education to the workforce.
On this podcast, we interview innovators, thought leaders, and change makers who are making waves and shaking things up. These live conversations are uncharted and unfiltered as we create space for what's not being discussed. These conversations are unavoidable.
Thank you guys for listening. This is episode 2 of season 1. This also happens to be the first episode ever where we are bringing on a guest live to talk about everything AI, HI, the education system, the workforce, and share some of the amazing things that they are doing.
I'm so excited, Arvin. I'm Michelle Arvin, and I just want to welcome everyone to Unscripted Intelligence, a podcast sponsored by the Human Intelligence Movement.
And I am Arvin Ross, one of your hosts, and today we'll be asking the big question: what does it take to build an AI-ready education system and workforce without losing our why?
So we have a special guest today, and today's guest is someone whose name is synonymous with impact in the world of education and innovation. We are thrilled to have Jennifer Womble with us today. She is more than a leader in ed tech. She is a builder of communities, a curator of purpose, and a voice of vision in a very, very noisy space. Since 2010, she has served as the conference chair of FETC, the largest educational technology conference in North America, where she brings together thousands of educators and leaders to reimagine what's possible in our schools. But behind the scale and scope of her work, there is something much more personal about Jennifer, and that is really her unwavering belief in human connection. If you've met her, you know that she will always greet you with a hug and take a selfie, and it is just a joy to be around her. She's a founding member of the Human Intelligence Movement, and we are honored to have you here, Jen. Welcome to Unscripted Intelligence.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much. I feel like I should carry you around and let you introduce me all the time. That was amazing.
That is
I'm
amazing.
so excited to be here.
I love that. Love that. Is there anything else you want to tell us before we get started about the work that you're doing or the why behind the work that you're doing?
I will definitely tell you. One of the things I'm super proud to be a part of this today, because one of the most amazing things that we do in education is touch the lives of students, right? And build community. And I believe that this entire movement is about bringing more humanity back into the classroom and back into school districts. So it's a huge initiative of mine. And I'm going to start with a huge shout out, because when we were brainstorming, what we were going to talk about and what the why would be on why we should be using AI. One of my most favorite authors of all time is Barbara Bray. So I'm doing a shout out she wrote Define Your Why and Grow Your Why. And Barbara Bray has been a real inspiration about helping us center on what our purpose is. And so a lot of times when there's all this other noise in the education space, that some of which we can control and some we can't, it's nice to help us stay focused and think about what our purpose is and really how we are building the humans that are in our classroom. So I'm incredibly grateful to be here today and talk about this topic that I think can really have an impact on every student. So thank you.
I love that. Love it. Thank you.
And I love that you shouted out Barbara Bray. She's one of my favorite people. So with that, you've kind of set the stage for why, the importance of why and purpose. So I'm really curious to hear your take on what is the cost when schools skip the why and jump straight into tech adoption? And what damage have you seen this have on learning?
Yeah, so one of the things, especially when you put on a large ed tech conference, which is focused around professional development, there's a lot of conversations about tools and systems and what are we building and dashboards and databases. And the reality is tools don't teach children. Teachers do. So the focus needs to always be on that human in the classroom and how do we support the teachers in every classroom. So one of the things that's been interesting is since, even any of the generative AI models have come out, is how do we entangle this or entwine this into education in a way that's meaningful? So before we even start having discussions about AI, there needs to be, why are we using it? What is the intention behind, what are we trying to solve or help in student learning, or with teachers being more efficient, if that's what we're going to focus on? That why is really essential before you need to know what you're going to build, why you're going to build it, because then you won't even know how to measure if it's been successful at the end, right? So I think, a lot of times the detriment could be if a district or a school decides, let's just try something for the sake of trying it, or because everyone else says they're using AI, right? Then we're not making sure that it's focused and purposeful. And so really what teachers need to do is look at their curriculum, look at the standards that they're teaching, look at their student outcomes and achievements. What could they create to help each of those students? Do they need support at home with tutors? Is that where AI fits? Do they need learning some study skills? Is that where AI fits? Do they need creative brainstorming? Is that where it fits? But you need to know what you're going to do with the AI before you just embed it. We don't just start with a tool. We start with the teacher focused, what are we designing for every classroom first? The same thing with administrators. Do we need our buses to be more efficient? So we're using AI to redo our routes. Do we need our financial systems to be done, have a better background check? Do we need to run AI? Same thing, the administrators need to be thinking about the intentional use of AI before we start to use it, and understanding what those boundaries are and how it can help us.
I love that. Your comment about using AI to reroute bus, that is, the thought has never crossed my mind, and I guess it shouldn't cross my mind because I'm not in that space. But that sounds like a very, very nice and unique and powerful way to use AI.
Yeah.
Sorry, go
I was
ahead.
going to say, a superintendent just told me today they're using it to rewrite their strategic plan. So they took all the interviews with their community members, put them into AI to come up with what was the most common goals and what people wanted in their district. And now they're using AI to write their strategic plan. It's like it's cutting days off the work to analyze those. So think about ways that you could be using it, but it's intentional, it's focused, and it's purpose driven.
I love that. And speaking of those kind of spaces with rewriting strategic plans, you've been in a lot of those rooms. You've been in a lot of those spaces where leaders are scared, where the pressure is real. There's funding deadlines, there's vendor pitches, there's public expectations, there's all of these different things that is kind of putting pressure on a lot of these leaders. Can you describe to us a moment or a situation where you've seen a leader kind of sell out their values or their why for speed or hype? What did it cost them? What did you see? Describe that for us.
So it's interesting because I want to say right now, most of the leaders who are employing AI are really being role models about it. They're out in the forefront. They're trying it. They're showing their staffs that as role models, here's how we try it and use it. So I don't think that I've seen any kind of space where it's been detrimental. I think what's been beautiful about it is that they have tried it, and maybe it did or didn't produce the results they wanted, but it was a learning for the entire group. It's like, okay, that maybe we didn't ask the right question, or maybe what's happening most often in districts is their data is not formatted in a way that they can actually get a lot of really great analysis from it. We have so much data on students. It's more than an NFL player, right? We know where they've lived. We know every AR book they've ever read. We know so much data, every spelling test, everything they've ever done, right? But are we giving that information to teachers in a way that's digestible about their interests and their achievements and their abilities, that they can actually use that and employ it in the classroom? Well, right now in most districts, the data is not in a way that AI can actually use it clearly. So what's happened is, as leaders are trying things, they're starting to figure out, the next step is we need to get all of our data organized in the right way. The next step is this. So I haven't really seen any failures yet. I've definitely seen, superintendents in Minnesota using it for strategic plans, superintendents, using it to try to streamline meetings, and, how can we better serve parents through using communication tools? So everything has been kind of a work in process. I don't think anybody has it perfect, but we do have a really wide spectrum. So some districts have been doing this for 3 years, step by step, training people, putting a plan in place and a process. Some are just starting. So some of those that are just starting are going to have a little bit of a head start because they can learn from those who went before them. But I'm going to say my hat's off to many of these district superintendents who are taking the lead, and they're really trying to role model how to do it out front. And that's pretty amazing. So it could be little things like taking video snippets and sharing it through social media to communicate with parents. They can be taking their welcome back. I've heard a lot of superintendents are taking their welcome back videos and welcome back messages this year, putting them in multiple languages, thanks to AI, so that they're serving more parents.
That is so cool.
Right? Isn't that cool? So some of those things they're all trying because they're seeing that they can reach more people, they can have better communication, and they're role modeling purposeful use of AI again.
Jen, you talk of you've in knowing your why, then you've talked about the learning, right? And you've been in the ed tech space for
Don't say it.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say since 2000.
Over 30 years.
Yeah. And so what is the learning that we can take? Because one of the things I'm really fearful of is sort of history repeating itself and us doing the same thing we did when we rolled out one-to-one devices, or when COVID happened and we were doing distance learning. Those are two trends that I think of. And now here's another tech trend that sometimes goes in front of learning. And so I'm curious about what would you say we've learned about our why, and what do we need to be really putting front and center for ourselves?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And hopefully, as a former social studies and history teacher, that's really important to me too, that we should be learning and moving forward and evolving as humans. So what's interesting is it actually reminds me of when we were actually on our hands and knees laying wire in schools, right? So even before, listen, don't laugh.
I wasn't going to say anything.
We didn't even have internet.
I was not born at that time. I'm not trying to say anything. I'm just here to learn. I love it.
You are not that young. Come on.
Yeah, we did.
I
remember putting in internet. We put in internet, so we were so we did learn some things, right? And a lot of those challenges were about equity because everybody wasn't getting the same access. And in reality, right now, we still don't have internet equity. We did with devices, during COVID, we raced like the Dickens to get every child one-to-one. Right. And then afterwards, a lot of school districts collected them back. So we're now in a situation where we're not one-to-one again. And we haven't built sustainability plans with the end of ESSER funds to make sure that those devices are getting, reinstated each time. And so there have been some lessons that we should be learning through this, right? I think the number one thing is that we have 3 million teachers in this country. Every single one of them needs to understand AI literacy. There is a different type of urgency here. And that urgency is more wrapped around not just being able to use it or be able to identify bias and be able to do that, but the children that are sitting in our classrooms right now are going to have a very large responsibility in their lifetime. And that's going to be creating the guidelines and creating the scope around how we use AI forever. So all those doomsday films that are out, that we kind of grew up with, those kind of situations are going to be controlled by the students in our classroom who, if they understand how to use it, they'll understand what guidelines need to be in place. And they're going to be our future lawmakers and policymakers. So I think that the urgency around teachers understanding AI right now is not just to tell kids, this is a nice to have, it'll help you study. This is an imperative because our future as a nation and as a country is really important, because you're going to hold the decision making in your hands of in the future how AI impacts our workforce, our lives, and as AI moves into robotics and agentic AI and quantum, we could talk a lot about that, right? But I think what we have to do and learn from the lessons of the past is create an urgency around it. We can't let this take a really long monolithic time to train everyone. It needs to just get done, almost that startup mindset, like we need to just get it done, move on, and and employ it when it's appropriate. So I think that's the biggest lesson we can learn, is scaling it quicker.
I love that. So you're kind of talking about this fear, this apprehension that some educators or administrators have, or even not knowing how to do it. Can you describe to us, not so much what it looks like when AI is being utilized properly? What would it feel like for the educators and the administrators? Can you paint a picture, take it from theory to reality? What would an educator feel like when AI is being utilized properly in an education space?
Okay, so my keyword here is going to be joy. Like, I think, to be honest, teaching is literally the best career you can ever have. I think for young, smart, children now, they should really consider teaching because it has such a powerful impact. You are creative every day. You're critically thinking every day. Your brain is buzzing with ideas. So there's a lot of great things that are happening in a classroom. But one of the things that I think teachers will feel is some joy and some lift. Because if we can we've been adding layer after layer after layer onto our teaching, teachers all over the country. We've been adding on more and more and more responsibilities, more and more layers that are really heavy on them. And so what AI can do is lift off some of those layers, right? Lift them off, take off some of the layers. Some of the things, giving feedback more easily to give you more time so that now if you really enjoy dynamic hands-on activities, you have more time to design those activities. If you really enjoy doing more outside movement activities, now instead of spending 6 hours on feedback or 6 hours on data processing or communication with all of our parents, those type of things we can leverage AI and then bring the joy back in teaching. The very first time I saw one of the generative AI tools several years ago, the first thing I thought to myself is, this would totally make me go back in the classroom again. This would make it fun to teach again. It would take off some of the things that have gotten really heavy, and giving instant feedback, all the things that we learned like in the beginning of teaching, like the Marzano strategies and Harry Wong strategies, all those things. What we know works. Instant feedback works. We know encouragement works. We know having a loving, caring, facilitating teacher in the classroom works. So if we could go back to concentrating on the things in teaching that we know works and let AI take the lift of those other pieces and be an assistant for them, I think that's how people will feel hopefully, a little bit more joy in their day and a little more lift because they can connect with the students again.
I love that, Arvin, bringing back the joy of teaching. You know, we talk about like just the art and science of teaching and going back to the art of teaching, the joy of teaching. What an amazing way to reduce teacher burnout, to also kind of give, like, just amplify the profession again, but also do, like, think about kids love a classroom where their teacher enjoys teaching and they enjoy coming to school, and there's this love of learning happening. So that's beautiful. Jen, something you said though before was around this idea of we need to think more like a startup. And I thought, Arvin, you were going to go there, and you didn't. And I'm coming back to it because she said something like, we got to move, we got to scale quicker, we got to act like a startup. Let's talk about that. Like, how does, in the system that is like cemented in bureaucracy and the way we
canceled.
I'm not going to get us canceled. I won't get Jen canceled either. Jennifer, how would we start acting like a startup?
Well, we can definitely learn from some other groups, right? We don't have to be the first ones to come out with this plan. There's other industries that we can learn from. We know upskilling is happening at Walmart. Upskilling happens at Amazon, Microsoft. So other companies have taken an approach where they need to train all of their staff. So we can learn from other industries. You know, we might have the cornerstone on teaching every single child, but we don't have the cornerstone on how to do everything exactly the right with efficiency, right? We do have a lot of layers of bureaucracy. It doesn't matter if you're in a public school, a private school, an independent school, a charter school, they're all teaching children. They all need to have the capability and understanding of how to use AI appropriately in their classroom, and also how to engage with students. What are the data privacy outlines? You know, what are the yeses and nos, right? Kind of that basic understanding. So the same way we've all adopted, I mean, let's just take the cell phone, right? We've all figured out really quickly how to use a cell phone. We can do learning in different ways. It doesn't have to be the way we've always done it. We don't have to have sit and get workshops. We don't have to all go to the county office for an entire week of free plan. You know, there's different ways to do it. So I think we need to look at it. Each superintendent in each district needs to look at their community and say, what is a great way that we can learn and leverage together as a community? And it might not be the same everywhere. It might be online. It might be live. It might be using student tutors to come and help. We have areas right now where students are doing a lot of the professional development.
Yeah.
So maybe there's different coaching techniques. I think we should look outside of our industry and, and also to other countries and how they're doing this efficiently. We already see it, Israel, the UAE, China, there's a lot of other places who've already employed AI in their curriculum. Let's look at those models and pick and choose the ones that are most efficient and the ones that will work best in our community.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about it's not a one size fits all approach is what I'm hearing. And Arvin, you're the chief culture architect at ProSolve. And I couldn't help but to think about when she was talking about culture and what it means to build culture in a district. And I'm really curious what your thoughts are on how to add to what she said about thinking like a startup.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is circling back to the top of our discussion about the why. And it's not just that internal why that motivates everything, but it's more of a microscopic why that asks why anything is being done. So in my opinion, the difference between our how education systems or schools and districts work now is they have these massive Titanic type models that are moving forward and can't shift, can't turn. Whereas a sailboat or a new company, a startup, they're very agile, very sleek, very slender, and typically tend to ask the question why for everything. So we've been taught to do this specific business practice or this specific process this way. A startup is going to say why. A startup is going to challenge and say, why are we doing this? And I think if we want to take that into a school system, how many times do our administrators ask, why are we still testing this way? Right? Why are we still aligning ourselves to these ideas, concepts, even the pedagogy, right? Like why are we still aligning ourselves to certain things that we've just been doing it for 50, 60 years? And so to me, that's kind of the big shift is I feel like I am now seeing whether it's a result of teachers being just upset and frustrated, but I'm seeing the question why being asked, but it's we are settling for the answer of we've just done it this way for 50, 60 years. And it's tough. I was even just in a school district, last actually or this week. And, I'm seeing teachers just constantly now wanting to reimagine systems, processes, structures, barriers, like blockades, red tape that has been there forever. And I think if we continue to do that, and if we allow people to ask that question, why, without getting offended or upset because you've done it this way since you were whatever, I feel like we would see a huge difference, and we would see the shift that we're talking about happen real time right in front of us. That's the difference between how startups and I think education systems work and operate.
I think you're exactly right. What's interesting is, do we want to just employ AI and say this is another thing on your plate, or do we want to reimagine how we're learning?
Exactly.
So this is a beautiful opportunity to reimagine what a classroom could look like, to reimagine how your district could be run. Like, this is a really unique opportunity that a really foundational technology is coming in that could really change things in a very powerful way. So what I think I'm seeing a lot of district leaders do is bring in community groups and have conversations with not just students and parents and teachers at the table, but also community businesses. Like, what are you guys looking at these students? What is our expectation of them coming out of high school? And, we've seen this in Utah. Matt Winters has done an amazing job rewriting, the portrait of a graduate, an AI graduate. So Utah's done the work. What should this look like? What kind of skills do we want our students to have as an AI graduate in a new world of work? And then as a school and a district, develop a plan for what should teaching and learning look like.
Yes.
And so it's a really unique opportunity to do that. And that's what startups do. They start with a clean slate, right? They don't start with, there's an existing tool. They start with a clean slate. So could we do the same thing? What's interesting is I just heard a district CIO that is doing some amazing work in Broward. And he said, I'm not calling it AI. I'm calling it all in. And he's like, we have to all be in on this. And so he's using that. It's kind of from that Jimmy Casas Culturize, right? So Jimmy Casas in his book Culturize talks about how we should take districts and create an attitude among our district that we all agree on. So if we all agree that AI is really all in, then you like will really in your mind behave differently and attack it differently. Because I'm all in. If this is going to help kids, it's going to make my day easier. Okay, I'm all in.
Yeah,
so I think that's what's going to have to happen from leaders to generate that.
Yeah, it's no longer just about doing the next initiative, this new thing that we're going to take on, this committee we have. I think, Jen, one of the things you spoke about really hits what the human intelligence movement is all about, and that is reimagining learning. We really believe that AI is here. There's tons of opportunities to rethink how we learn and the skills that students need. And so I've met Matt Winters. He's a fabulous guy. I need to go find that AI portrait of a graduate. What were some of do you recall were there unique competencies that jump out at you on that?
Sure. And I want to say probably one of the most overwhelming things that I think we could all agree on is adaptability. Because students now in the workforce we've been talking about problem solving, we've been talking about communication, but adaptability is something really interesting. And when I was in high school, nobody talked about becoming a geneticist or becoming a search engine optimizer. Those jobs didn't exist, right? So we've always been preparing students for jobs that didn't exist, but we're just saying it differently now. We're saying that you need to be adaptable. Students need to be able to think out of the box, right? So I think that some of those things that we've always really known students needed, they've kind of put those together in a more formulated way. But I would definitely, look at the Utah Artificial Intelligence group, and that's what they're doing. And in Florida, I'm on our AI task force, and we've looked at their work too to try to determine what do we expect students to know and be able to do when they leave school. And so it doesn't matter where they're going to go in life, immediately after. I think we've been focusing too much on, do they go to a training school? Do they go to the military? Do they go to college? Regardless of what they do, these are human skills that every student needs to have. They need to know how to problem solve. They need to communicate. They need to be adaptable. And so they do need these AI skills. We're seeing the jobs already being cut from some people who don't have these skills. So we want to put our students in the best position possible by making sure they have these when they go out the door.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more that adaptability is one of the top skills that we need. But I get I get almost discouraged because and I try not to. So maybe Jen, you're such an optimist. Maybe
no, I know, help us.
But how do you build adaptability in a classroom where kids are really given the right answer, expected to conform to kind of what is standard for the classroom? They're sitting in their desks doing their packets or their worksheets. How do we build adaptability in that kind of classroom?
Yeah, well, what's interesting to me about a lot of the chat models is that it goes back to Socratic teaching. So if we can in our minds go back, put ourselves on a toga, go back to the days of Plato and think about Socratic learning and how all the people who we think of as geniuses at the time, right? The Einsteins, they all had one-on-one learning, which we know through every ounce of research, the very best way to improve student learning is, by two factors of learning is if we have one-on-one, tutoring and one-on-one teaching, but being able to use a chat tool doesn't give you the answer. It creates a conversation. The same way that people were learning in ancient Greece with the Socratic method, we're going to talk through things. We're going to ask questions. We're going to have conversation and discourse, something we're missing in our society. And we're going to walk through it. We're going to talk through things, but we're not going to always give you the answer. And that builds curiosity. And that curiosity then can lead to more creativity, which is why in America, we've been leading the world in the number of patents that we get because we've been able to have students who are more creative thinkers. And we also can build on that critical thinking as we are having these conversations. But when we give kids the right answer and we give them a worksheet, we don't allow them to develop that thinking style.
Right.
We don't let them go deeper through all of those processes. So AI is good, could give us the possibility through using a whole myriad of tools, whether you're, Conmigo or School AI or BRIS, whatever you're using, right? Having conversations and working through things and going deeper into subjects is something teachers have been wanting to do for a long time, is to get kids to drill deeper. But we haven't been able to go in a classroom and have 35 different conversations at the same time. But now we have some tools that can do that, and so what we've been asking teachers to do with personalized learning is a demonstrative task. We don't ask a doctor to walk into the waiting room and give 35 different, diagnoses of every patient in there at the same time, and then treat them all and make them all better and then walk out the door. But we do that to teachers. We say, oh, we're going to give you all these different kids from different backgrounds, and they're not even on the same level academically, disability, no matter what it is, right? But we expect you to do the same thing for all of them, but haven't been giving them the tools. Right. Now we are giving them the tools that they can actually personalize learning to meet the needs of each of those kids, go deeper into conversation, work through their learning to where they're getting a deeper level of thought. And then that adaptability comes from changing the situations around a little bit. And now teachers don't have to just stick to a very strict schedule. They have some malleability themselves because some of the things have been lifted off their plates. I'm hoping.
That is a mic drop right there. I don't know how we're gonna clip up that whole last 5-minute segment.
I'm sorry, I'll talk shorter.
No, it was brilliant. I have conversations all day long with my AI, and I think that is how it levels up my intelligence and pushes me to synthesis and really evaluation and new ideas. I just never really thought about it like that before, Jen. And
how many times do I say, I talk to mine all day too. I do it wearing my glasses because I can just talk in my glasses all day.
We have to talk about those, Arvin. We have to talk about those. Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
So I know. I don't need real glasses, so mine have the blue screen in them to protect your eyes. But these are actually made in Florida. This is a Florida group, Lucid, that has these, but it's AI. So I'm talking to it all day. Like while I'm doing email, I'll say, what's this person's last name? And what this, but then when I'm asking questions, what's interesting is how many times I'll go, can you repeat that? Like, we know for information to go to short to long-term memory, we need to have contact with it 3 times. So I find myself saying, say that again, like, let me rethink about that. So I would never do that with like a book, maybe, or an article, but I'm actually trying to make sure, like, can you repeat that? Will you say that again, or say it a different way? Think about how many students don't understand the vocabulary. But if their AI tutor is saying it in a different way, then maybe they understand it now, or with a different tone or different accent or a different voice. So think about how many students we could reach if we just made some of those communicative switches to how we're teaching them.
I absolutely love that. I have a a college student friend of mine who's a kid I mentor, and he programmed this ChatGPT to only respond to him in sarcastic manner. And it's really funny because he's kind of built this conversation that is like, they have their own little inside jokes. I honestly think it's weird. I think it is weird. I'm like, that is something off of an episode of Black Mirror. But he was explaining to me how he was processing a piece of real critical feedback that I gave him about an area of his life. And so he went to his ChatGPT friend and shared the feedback that I gave him. And the sarcastic response was, well, duh, I've been trying to tell you that for a couple months now. And then he had an interaction that really kind of caused the feedback that I gave him to stick. Mind you, I've been mentoring this individual for roughly 9 years at this point. And so there's nothing new that I'm saying that I haven't said in the last 9 years, but it stuck when his AI ChatGPT said it to him in a sarcastic way. They're able to laugh and have a conversation about it. So this makes a lot of sense.
What's super interesting, and I'm sure you guys are all following the SCALE Institute, SCALE, but they are the group at Stanford that is compiling all generative AI research. So any research on, teaching and learning, they are compiling it all. So one of the pieces I just saw in there just this week was really interesting to me is how students are actually using AI, because we're monitoring it. Now they've been using it in Minecraft. They've been using it in Snapchat. They've been using it long before school. So this is definitely a foundational, technology. Kids are coming to school already using it before, teachers are trying to tackle it and then fill them in on the ethics and the digital equity of it. But what's interesting is less than 2% of all the questions ever were give me the answer. And most of the questions students are asking are personal questions, like how do I handle this situation? How do I practice a speech before class? So most of the things that students are doing are personal questions that they have. But when they're working through schoolwork, less than 2% of them ever even think to say, give me the answer. They're like, how do I work this out? Or send me to a resource for this, or where do I find this? A lot of them are trying to figure out where in the materials they actually get started. And if you think about students' day, especially in middle and high school, they're going to 6 or 7 subjects all day. When they get back to their homework at night, they're just trying sometimes to figure out where they're supposed to be and what they're supposed to be doing and where to find the information. So it is interesting now that we're starting to gather more and more documentation and research about how students are using it. I think a lot of people who are bringing up the cheating incidents might be surprised to see how students are using these tools to try to better not just their school, but their life. And most of them report the reason they're doing it is they feel overwhelmed. So why are you looking for the answers in ChatGPT? Because I'm overwhelmed. So maybe this empathy that we could create from the teacher perspective of understanding why students are wanting to do this and what they're getting from it could really build those relationships in the classroom in a different way than we've been able to do.
You just gave me an idea for like 4 new companies. I'm not going to share them on air because they will be stolen quickly. If you're listening to this
I'm an investor.
If you're listening to this podcast, you have secretly signed an NDA where you cannot talk about anything we discussed here outside, and you cannot profit from any of our conversations. That is now a fact. Michelle, I know you wanted to dive into some of Jennifer's work with FETC. Do you want to shift into that segment?
I do, because I love this conversation and could go on for days around the focus of learning first, the human skills that we need. And, FETC is a technology conference, and your theme is innovation and inspiration and infinite possibilities, right? And so there's so many tools out there and so much tech that I can imagine it's hard to keep the focus on learning first. And so I'm really curious, Jen, I know where your heart is. How do you do it? How do you make sure that this conference, and I went last year for the first time and was blown away.
That was like 10 years ago, so beat you there.
But I was like, this conference, the networking and human connection at the conference, I felt different than any other. And I go to a lot of conferences in a year. So how do you do that? How do you keep that human connection? How do you keep it focused on learning and also innovation and inspiration?
So that's a lot, but yeah. So this year we're focusing on game changer. So our theme this year is going to be about game changing. And because really that idea of reimagining education is what we really want people to be thinking about, but we want it to be fun. So the most important part of FETC to me is the community, is that we are creating a network. The best things we do as humans is communicate, right? And so the best thing we can do before, during, and after any kind of event is to keep that communication going. So we really design activities at the event. We make sure that we're treating people in a professional manner where they have time to build relationships. Listen, we've been talking a lot about how kids don't have the same kind of friendships. They're on their device too much. Well, guess what? Adults need help building relationships too. We're not all great at that, and we need help and time and space for that. And so we want it to be almost just like, if we can all remember going back to elementary school and how it was so happy when you walked on campus and everyone said good morning and everyone was happy to see you and you were singing a song on your way into classroom, right? Like that's the kind of learning environment we want there to be. We want there to be music. We want there to be, enjoyable time away from campus to learn, because learning should be fun. That which is learned in happiness is never forgotten, right? So we
Mhm.
want that kind of environment to exist. So we have to design it that way.
Mhm.
So we design lunchtime so that everybody gets vouchers. They can all go down to the tables. They can sit with their colleagues and have lunch together and talk about what they've learned and reflect and have that kind of white space to think about how they're going to take what they're learning and put it in their schools. We give you receptions in the expo floor that have free drinks because you're an adult professional and that's what you deserve to have, right? And so we create opportunities. If you don't know how to go and talk to companies, I've created expo hall tours where featured speakers will take you to their favorite booths and show you, here's what talking to a booth looks like. Here's how you ask the right questions about an ed tech tool. Here's how you can approach different products. And these are the kind of questions to ask. Like, we're trying to model the kind of learning that we want there to be in schools too, and then in districts. So that's kind of the way we do it. We also design a program that has 8 different tracks. So the goal is you're bringing somebody from almost every department of your school as a team, because learning is a team sport, right? So we want your library and media specialists, your esports coaches, your IT team. We want your, principals. So when everybody's there in different sessions learning, they need to have time together to say, now, how do we employ this in the school? Like, it's a real team approach that happens. So kind of putting all those pieces together is creating also personalized learning spaces. So we offer probably too many different ways to learn. You can be walking through a poster gallery, or you could be sitting at a round table. We want to personalize. This year, I'm super excited. We have a VR classroom. So every single session, every attendee's in a headset, and they are learning from the trainer that is also inside of AR and VR. So we have the only VR school in America in Florida. And so the staff of that school is actually going to staff our room from Optima Ed. So every single session is going to be in a VR headset. So how can you learn to teach an immersive environment if you've never been in one? We want to put you in one. How can you learn to use a 3D printer if you've never tried? Come try it. So we're trying to create the kind of experiences that make teachers want to be excited about teaching and want to try new things and want to employ new tools, but also to have super intense conversations with their IT team and leadership about what they need. So there's room for that serious communication and learning so that when they go back to their school districts, they can really make a change happen.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you definitely have covered all the bases, and I loved being there last year and look forward for this.
Oh, I would love having y'all again. And this year, I'm so excited. Another new thing we're doing is a digital wellness room. So it's with all the furniture and yoga and all this, but also it has sessions on how do we help students with wellness and how do we help our faculty with wellness. There's a lot of pieces of technology. We've added a safety and security summit, which has really helped our facilities people understand technology in that area. Every single asset in your school is now impacted by technology.
Yeah.
So you need your whole team to understand how these things are intertwined so that they're more efficient.
So well-rounded.
I love it. I have one big question that I'm going to toss out to you, Jennifer. But then I also, if we can pop it up on the screen, I would love it if those who are viewing the podcast, listening to the podcast, can try to answer this question as well. Go ahead and type it in the comments. If we see something that stands out, we may just bring it on our screens as well, or read it out loud. Here's the big question. We've talked about a lot of theory, about a lot of ideas, a lot of tools, a lot of frameworks. Outside of the tools, frameworks, the strategies, and outside of like all of the theoretical stuff, if we get this right, if we get the integration of AI into our education system correct, what kind of future do you think education could help unlock?
So what's interesting is I will counter that with the future is now. Like, we keep talking about the future like it's far on the way. It's right now. We already have an AI director at our company. Like, it's already happening. So that's one of the things about it. I'll also say it looks like right now schools are taking one of two paths. Some schools are employing AI tools in individual classrooms, keeping with the traditional schedule, keeping with the traditional playground time and stations and all that, right? But implementing AI into that. The other way is that there are schools who are redesigning their days like the alpha schools are doing, and what Mackenzie Price is doing, she is leveraging personalized learning for a few hours a day. Then the rest of that day, those teachers are empowered to then teach all kinds of amazing things, okay, for the rest of the day. So there really is already starting to be some different patterns of how this could look, right? So what I'm hoping that this looks like, regardless if you're going to use a traditional bell schedule and implement new tools, or you're going to redesign, use a micro school like what Rob Dixon is doing, or, you know, some of these other schools are doing, regardless of that path, my hope is that at the end, we have students who are coming into the workforce with a better idea of what kind of career they might be interested in. I'm hoping that we are able, through personalization, to help students realize what their own potential is, because every human to me is unlimited potential, but most kids don't know what their skill sets are. They don't even know what they're always interested in. We haven't done a good job of preparing them to make choices after high school or be empowered with their skills because they don't really know. So I think this combination with CTE is really powerful because kids can start to understand themselves better. They can start to understand how they learn, what their skills and talents are, so that actually they're better decision makers after high school. And AI can do that. We start personalizing, you know, for students, the teacher's going to know more about the kids will know more about themselves. And so at the end, I think that personalization, that kind of self-actualization, I think we're going up the Bloom's ladder here, right? A little bit. And so to be self-actualized after high school and know your skills, your talents, and what your potential is, and having the confidence that you can take on anything that's ahead of you would be a really great outcome for our students.
Love it. Love it. Love it.
That's fantastic. And here's what I really appreciated, Jen, is how you framed it as either model can work to get us there. And so I just appreciate the focus on the possibilities there.
And there might be other models. I'm open to seeing
right.
what else comes, right? I think there's some exciting other things that could happen.
We heard from Barbara, who talked about learners knowing their why, who they are, what skills they've acquired, and believe in themselves. So that very similar to what you said. You know, Arvin, we have heard, this has been an amazing conversation with Jen, and we have talked about so many things. And I guess, you know, as we wrap up, the thing that I would love for us to identify is what are the unavoidable truths that we need to face? So as we talked about unavoidable things, what do you think is the biggest unavoidable truth to face?
And before you answer that, Jennifer, I want to also toss that question out to anybody listening and watching. Answer that question as well in the comments. But back to you, Jennifer.
I'm going to say it's bias. And part of that is just being human. Sometimes we're not aware of our own biases. I did a lot of research when I was in the classroom about feedback, and I was a scorer of AP exams and did some work with ETS. And what's really interesting is every teacher intends to really help students improve and learn, and they can't help it. Not every kid is getting the same feedback right now. It's just, as a human, it's almost impossible. Even if you're trying to grade every paper as fast as you can, it gets late at night. You're tired. Somebody has bad handwriting. So, you know, the level that we can give every one of those kids, we don't always give them our very best in the feedback and assessments for a lot of different human reasons. So there's bias in that. And there's bias in what materials we select. There's bias in just what we select to do as a content topic every day, or in the choices we make for activities for students. But one of the things that AI could really balance out and offer is eliminating that bias in some of the areas where it could be hurting students. Can we be more efficient at grading with, you know, a rubric? Could we be more efficient? Also, do we recognize the bias and hallucinations that might be in AI still? They're still working that out too, right? So it's a bigger conversation, but also the bias of like just having a tool to use. Right now, a lot of these tools, OpenAI and Gemini, they're free. But even there's students at home who don't know they have access to it. They don't know they could be using it as a tutor for homework. There's parents that want to help their kids, that they have some literacy issues to overcome.
Oh,
And they
yeah.
don't know those tools exist. So we've got to eliminate the bias of only letting certain kids get the tool or certain people get that too. So, more in the form of equity as well. So
Mhm.
I think those are, two of the really biggest things we need to look at is where do we have bias and how can we eliminate that to help every student succeed the best, and then also, is there equity involved there? Do we all have an equitable shot at access to these tools and how we're using them? Right now in the country, only 25 states have state policy so far. So some districts are 3 years ahead of other districts.
Mhm.
So we know that it's not equitable distribution right now, even though these tools, if you've got an internet connection, you've got access to these tools, right? So we need to do a better job of, communicating that to our communities as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. My unavoidable truth is when you said the future is here. And that is the unavoidable truth. Like, we've got to stop talking about the future's coming and what to build. The future's here, and we've got to start scaling quicker and faster. And so I think really thinking like a startup, thinking about how do districts really embrace that mentality and realize that the future's here today. So what about you, Arvin? What's your unavoidable?
My unavoidable truth is that I apparently need to start a company that has to do with AI and education and teaching in some way, shape, or form. Now, I think my unavoidable truth would be that AI, specifically in education, has the ability to really personalize things in a way that I think would have been really helpful for a kid like me. This conversation, I did not think about, well, prior to this conversation, I did not think about what those how powerful a one-on-one interaction, a personalized AI personality how it could impact the student. The thought hadn't crossed my mind. I was only thinking about, systems and processes and like grading papers or making assignments. Like we've helped a couple of teachers, use AI to rethink their lesson plans or to make it, more aligned with this set of standards or whatever. But the idea of almost like a personal tutor, the idea of a personal note taker in my class, that then when I go home, I get to break down the entire school day, the entire lessons that I received, and teach it to me in a way that I would receive best. I could literally think about some kids that I know recording the entire school day lesson and then telling their AI to turn this into a Marvel movie. And read it to me. Like, that's lit. Like, that would be insane. Like, transform, this 10-minute lesson into Avatar, the last Airbender type of world or whatever. Like, there's just so many possibilities that I did not think about prior to this. So my unavoidable takeaway is that this kind of stuff is possible, and that even my thinking, was very limited, but prior to this conversation.
And listen, it can happen now. So my youngest has ADD. So he has this Plaud. Do you have the Plaud? Plaud. So the Plaud records everything that's happening. So when he goes to class and records the class, it downloads it, right? And then he says, pull out 15 review questions for me. Just like we used to teach kids to do Cornell note taking, and in the gutter, you put your practice questions. Well, now Plaud can record it. Give me 15 practice questions that I need to know for the next time I go to class.
Yeah.
So, and then also take what we did, turn it into a song, and let me hear that
song.
Like, think about learning economics through a song. Think about, doing it in a different way. So, I mean, there's some tools that we just stop and think about, what do we really want kids to know? And then how can we help them learn it in a new way? The possibilities are really limitless. I mean, they really are, but we need to take that time to think about it and understand that every kid is learning differently. And then that empathy will help us create these new opportunities for students, I think.
I love it. I love it. We've talked about a lot of things: education, AI, and HI. If you're listening and you know a teacher who is stressed out, struggling, ready to quit, send them this podcast, send them the contact information. Speaking of which, Jennifer, how can we connect with you? How can the listeners learn more about you or follow your thought leadership and anything like that? Just go ahead and share it out.
I'm everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. You can find me in those places, and I'm pretty good at responding. So I would love for you to also visit our website, www.fetc.org, and learn about FETC, and hope to join us next January so we can keep growing this learning community, keep sharing these important ideas, and keep this positive support. I think the most important thing we all need coming into this fall is a lot of support and encouragement. There's still a lot being thrown at education, and we need to keep growing this community so that we're supportive of one another and encouraging this push forward, because it's not always easy, right? So that's definitely some of the best ways to find me. And I'm happy to connect also through LinkedIn messaging. Sometimes that's the best way, right? We love that as well. So all of those are great. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You can find us anywhere on Spotify, LinkedIn Live, humanintelligencemovement.org, or even YouTube. Michelle, can you talk to us about, or can you tell everybody what is happening next on our next episode?
Yes. Thank you, Jennifer. It has been a pleasure. Next week, we are live again, July 24th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and Kunal Dalali will be our guest, bringing the topic of agentic AI. Did I even say that right? It's so
great.
Agentic AI. And what and this is so new, what he is working on and building, and he's been sharing some things on LinkedIn. So I can't wait for us to talk about not only his focus on parenting in an AI world, but also what it means to really redesign school, and this danger around content equals better learning, and the future, and how the future is here, and are we ready for it? So Kunal will be talking
There's
about
some big announcements today were made on agentic AI, so you'll have a lot to catch up on. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for having me on. Now we have a human connection as a result of AI. So thank you.
Love it. Thank you guys. Catch you later.